clear sponge. This is my leftover from the blue sponge. You're not trying to wipe it off, you're just trying to take some of the color off. So you're going to touch it gently, kind of firmly, and absorb some of that excess color so you don't have it so dark, and you'll have a little bit of the pink residue left on your sponge when you're done. No smearing, no wiping, just gently absorbing any excess fluid so that it's not so bright. Again, you want to make sure you take off extra paint in smaller patches so that you don't have it soaking in too deeply where you don't want it. Okay, so I think we're ready for his face. We have a little bit of chin left, neck to do. It doesn't have to be perfect on this layer because it's just the skin tone, so we don't want it to have so much thickness that it's leaving marks where you don't want it. So it's just there to be the background to the details. We haven't put any details at all on yet. This is just building up the skin tone layers. Alright, so I think that's pretty close to even. Looks like he's missing kind of a spot right here on his forehead, so I'm going to gently tap a couple of spots on there so that they're not a white spot of emptiness. Inside the ears are a little bit tricky because they're so deep, and again, this is only the build-up layers of the skin tones. Will come in with shading on the insides of the ears, but I like to leave a little bit of paint going in them as we go so that it creates the look of depth. So I'm not just trying to fill up a blank spot at the end. It's more just the details and shading. Alright, little stinker Tully or Tolliver is ready, or his head is done. We'll move on to a limb. I'm going to pause at the knee to make sure that I don't have any spots that are like super thick, and blend in some of these little creasy areas where we don't want the paint to pool. Alright, so the bottom half is done, ready for the top half of his little leg. Alright, so that is about as dark as I want him. He's almost as dark as me, if you can see. He just doesn't have any creases or details yet. So that's pretty close to where we're going to stop with his skin tones. I have one more layer of mottling after this, which is a pale skin tone color mottling that just kind of helps pull it all together with these 3 layers, and then we'll take a break and cook them. So this will be the first step, or the second step, I guess, in those 3 layers. Again, I'm going to pause at the leg, or at the knee, and wipe off any excess paint that's too dark on there. This is also the sponge that I use for preemie babies, because their mottling is a lot more dense than it is on a full-term baby. I guess it just is the size difference. You have a tiny baby, you get tiny mottlings. You have a bigger baby, you get bigger mottlings. Makes sense. Alright, so I think that is done for the little second leg. Moving on to some hands. I'm only going down to the top of the fingers. I don't want to touch the fingertips with this, because that will mess up the clean nail bed that we'll need for the details on the nails and finger bed nail beds. One hand done. Here comes the second hand. Whoa, that's a little dark, so take that right back off. Again, no wiping, because it'll take off the purple layers underneath. But that just went on a little too dark, so we're going to try that one again. I guess it's still a little bit dark. We'll just model it down, and my paint looks like it's getting a little thicker. When you open the jar of paint, it starts to dry out like immediately, which is okay. You have the thinner, but it never like goes away. It just dries. So that the drier it gets, the thicker it gets. You just have to work around that and mentally pay attention to that, so that you can see that it's darker on one limb than another, and remedy it by adding more thinner when you need to. And sometimes you use up some of the color, and occasionally you have to add more color. So you have to use your deductive reasoning and tell yourself to add some more color when it's necessary. I'm not going to do this pink color on Shellden's skin, because I don't want it to be too human. I'm going to do a brown model on him instead, and start taking him more towards the earthy tones. So I gave him the blue undertones and the purple first layer of model, but I'm going to skip the pink model on him and go for the undertone models. Alright, so I will catch up on Tully with her red stuff, but for now I'm going to skip ahead, and I'm going to go to the white layer of paint. So this is made using, I think it's Flesh number 8, a really thin cream color from Bountiful Baby again. And this stuff is kind of like a watery, milky texture. A little thicker, but not so thick that it goes on pure white, otherwise your baby will look like it's got paint on the top layer. You have to have it thin enough that it looks like it sinks, yet thick enough that it will be visible. And this stuff is kind of strange. This is the only color that really truly does it this way. It can go on and you can't even see any color, but when it dries, the color pops out. It's bizarre. So even though you may not think that there's color going on, give it a minute and let it dry. So here's our mottling sponge for our white, or our cream. And this is a little bit bigger. I haven't made a small sponge yet, so we're just going to improvise and use this one. I'm going to go back to Tully's head, Tolliver's head. I keep these two getting mixed up. So it's nice and thin, and again, we're only going to dip from the stuff at the top of the jar, so it's not too thick. And start at the back of him. Okay, see? And you can't see it going on anything but wet, which is bizarre. But as it sits there, it will start showing up as kind of a fleshy, light skin color, and it is what creates them looking